Hey, how's it going, everyone? The next One Piece chapter is out, and we are here to discuss, review, and look at all things from this chapter because Oda is still not holding back. We are continuing on with Sabo's explanation, his story, what's happening currently during the reverie. So we've gone back in time a little bit, but my God, has Oda stepped it up. So no cover story. We just have a nice colour spread of the ladies of One Piece. But chapter 1084, the attempted murder of a celestial dragon. So pretty serious accusations. But we kick off right inside the castle, inside Pangaea in Marijois, and we've got guards being knocked out by Sabo. And they are lying on the floor. He's just taken them out, and Bonney appears in front of him, and they recognize each other. And Bonney is very aware of why Sabo is here and knows that there's no point trying to chit chat or have small talk. Their objectives have aligned pretty much, and they're running through the castle and discussing why and what they're doing and saying about like breaking prisoners out. You know, Sabo saying, I heard Kuma had a daughter, but never would have assumed. And she's saying that this whole time she has kept tabs on the Revolutionary Army because I'm sure she's well aware that her father was a part of it and then has since been adapted by Vegapunk and now serves as a robot here. But she says, I know from my own research that you are trustworthy, Sabo, and basically can guarantee that my dad will be safe with them. And that's at that moment that Karasu, or one of his Sut Ravens, flies in and communicates with Sabo. And he passes the keys that he took off the guards and says, right, get Kuma and the others out and get back to HQ. And as he's flying away, he's like, well, what are you going to do? And he'd be like, there's something I've got to finish first. There's something I'm not done with. And then I'll be right out. And he's like, cool, leave it to you. And then we get Bonnie's sort of mention leading into what will probably be the next several chapters now, the next arc, obviously. And Sabo says, like, well, you up to? What's your next move then? You know, we're breaking your dad out. Now, this is interesting. Bonnie doesn't want to go straight with Kuma, which is fascinating, but it makes sense because we know where Bonnie is. We know Bonnie's on Egghead, and she even addresses it now. She's off to Egghead, so she doesn't travel with Kuma. She doesn't even see Kuma. She's like, I'm off to Egghead because her priority is restoring her dad's mind because he is a robot. He may recognize Bonnie, but the feelings aren't there, and she's trying to figure out how to fix that. So she's going to Vegapunk to get it all sorted. And his observation kicks in, and Sabo, it must be just some speed, grabs Bonnie and jumps up to like the rampart of this hallway, out of sight, while guards are coming through, and they're listening to the conversation of the guards and like whispering to each other. And the guards are saying that they saw someone this way, but you know, there's fewer and fewer of us around. Like we're now like short of breath. There's not enough of us to cover this massive area. It's not working basically. And while they're discussing, they overhear and they say, "Well, you know the reason for that, right? Why there's so many of us like scattered around. There's not many of us left." And they said, "Well, because one of them says it's because they saw it, didn't he?" And they're like, "What are you on about?" And he says, God, they saw it, the legendary Phantom Room, and immediately like stop talking nonsense, gosh. And then Sabo's got like that, hmm, a legendary Phantom Room, you say? So even amongst the guards, gossip gets out. The reason why there aren't many guards around anymore is maybe they stumbled upon Eames' room or knew about a room high up, by accident on their patrols or whatever, went looking for it even. But Sabo and Bonney evade detection and part ways and saying like, right, Egghead's in the new world, like going ahead that way. So we're going the opposite direction. So it's Camelback Kingdom HQ, other direction. And it's like Bonnie's reaction of, you know what, the revolutionaries are made out to be like these radicals, but you're actually like pretty nice and friendly. So you know what, look after my dad, but we're determined to save the same person. So all's good there. Right, history lesson time now. This is the big gun. So Cobra is in the throne room with the five elders. Lovely shot. Cobra's there. Five elders are all in front of him. Staircase up, and then it's like a balcony. Even more stairs, and then the empty throne sits at the top. So we've seen this room many times. Lovely here. And they address, they're like, right, Cobra, why have you asked us to meet? Why have you come here? And he's like, well, let me start from the beginning. So, as you're aware, the world government, the organization that you are, was founded 800 years ago. And that was when 20 monarchs all came together and they agreed all their families would move to Marie and live as one clan, one group. And they are now what we reference as the Celestial Dragons. So these are things we know. We're aware of this fact, but I'm loving Cobra like talking about this to the world government. This is so good. So we're seeing reactions, we're seeing them listening, We don't know where Cobra's going, but they're watching how he's talking, and they themselves have to tread very carefully with what line he's passing. But he goes on and says, well, they are the ones responsible for the creation of this world, and as such, they've ruled ever since. For those 20 families, they've been in power since then. And he explains to them, which I'm sure they're very well aware of, but the 20 families agreed that they were all equal, and that to ensure no individual dictator would rise up from among them and be the one in the shadows, they would install an empty throne. So the throne that sits in Pangaea, no one sits on it. Funny. But they each placed a weapon in front, and they're the weapons we see planted in the ground in front of the throne. 20 weapons for the 20 families, all placed there to symbolize and a vow amongst them that no one would sit upon it, that they would rule together. So, a pretty fair deal, sounds nice. And then we find that those 20 families that went to Marie to rule the world as such, that other royal families needed to then be chosen and were actually handpicked by those sovereigns and became the new founders of places and preside over those places and rule nations that the royal families have moved away from. So instead of ruling that nation that they had, they've opted out, they've become a celestial dragon, but they picked who would be next in line to rule that area. And Cobra explains what we know in that a smooth transition happened where all references that mention the previous dynasty, the reign of the other people, everything we know about history, removed. Nothing redacted. Everything was gone. There is no history prior to the founding of the world government 800 years ago. And that leans into Void Century and what Robin's on a whole quest to find out. And I love that Cobra's also onto this. but we get some information straight from his mouth saying that, yeah, we have no information about what happened to those sovereigns way back when. Except for the sole exception of one monarch, the monarch of Alabasta, Queen Lily of House Nefertari. So, someone 800 years ago, the queen, the ruling queen of Alabasta, was one of the 20 founding members of the Celestial Dragons. So, the Nefertari family were around back then and were involved in setting up the Celestial Dragon. And Cobra's aware of this. He knows his information. So now the five elders are intrigued. And he goes on to explain, well, it's interesting actually, because when the world government was founded, those 20 royal families agreed, right, no one rules the throne, we all rule together. Swords, we stay here. Queen Lily didn't though. She decided that she was to return to Alabasta and continue her reign. That is why the Nefertaris are still the reigning sovereigns in Alabasta, because they didn't opt to be a celestial dragon. She didn't want to become one. And it turns out that there aren't 20 weapons then. There are only 19 weapons in front of the throne. And then they're catching on. Well, we've got Mustache, Five Elder, saying, well, what's your point in all this then? What exactly are you trying to ascertain? And Cobra explains, well, it's funny you say, because I've looked through all of the ancient documents, all the ancient texts, everything that my kingdom has on our history as a kingdom and the world. And as far as he can tell, as the king of Alabasta, like nothing is closed off to this man. As the ruling sovereign currently, he says, all accounts that the chronology of Alabasta show, that period that happened after the Void Century, there's one thing that it has in common. Queen Lily is never mentioned once. And now it's sort of odd that, she never made it home to Alabasta. The burden actually fell to her younger brother, Cobra says. And he's just like, well, I'm just curious, do you have any record from Queen Lily of what became of her, what happened? And Saturn is the one to chime in. And he says, well, I'll put it to you bluntly. But we hear his response, but we see that Eam is listening into this conversation. Eam in that floral, beautiful room, probably atop the castle, hidden away, just with these butterflies. But a transponder snail on a podium, revealing this information, or Saturn's voice is just emanating from it, saying that 800 years ago is a long time. And it's true. Of the 20 families, the Nefertari were one of them, but did not move here. But it's probably something we can't find now, that when she returned back to her country, that was her decision. But the details of why, her journey, her motives, the whole thing is just way too long ago. They're probably lost to the annals of time and history. And said it's simply just something we don't know about. And Cobra's just like, well, okay. Yeah. Rattle the cage. So, anyway, what's the meaning of D? Man's trying to find out about his family and just immediately switches gears. So, in that case, what's the meaning of D? The will of D, what is it? And then bald man with glasses of the five elders is like, whoa, why are you asking that? And then we see a very shocked reaction from all of the elders. Cobra explains, well, the truth is that a short letter written by Queen Lily has been passed down through each generation of the Nefertari family. Ooh. So Cobra knows all of this. He was trying to gauge what they would reveal. Obviously, they weren't going to reveal anything, and he's decided to play his card that he had. That he has a letter that was passed down from 800 years ago from Queen Lily. But we don't get to see anything else from that currently because we immediately jump into the courtyard of Pangaea Castle. And Shirahoshi has been captured. She is in chains, bound, and Kuma's the one to have done it. Kuma has wrapped her up, got her chained, and good old Charlos is celebrating. He's finally caught the giant mermaid. It's always what he's wanted. Oh, I wonder what she eats. Oh, I'm going to ride her to town every day. I'm going to parade around. And if she doesn't listen, then she'll know pain. He seems very excited. And we see other members of the sort of royal families from different places, people who have visited for the reverie, are in a panic saying, we're not getting involved. Celestial Dragon's doing this. There's nothing we can do. She's just a stranger now. We're just going to run away and leave her to it. And even she's like, "What? Why aren't we do? Why isn't anyone doing anything? I need help." And we get our boy Fukaboshi, one of the brothers, charging in, saying they're all spineless algae, and saying that as a delegate from his kingdom, or obviously his sister, he's like, he reasons and is sort of saying that I'm very well aware that I'm in sort of rule for my kingdom, but for the sake of my sister and stuff, I'm not going back without her, and I'm not leaving her here in this rotten place. And we see that Charles is just like, away with him. Kuma, just deal with him, my invincible slave, and he fires off one of the laser beams from his mouth. But Fukaboshi is a fighter. We've seen him with his trident. He manages to get out of the way. He might take some damage, and it turns out all three brothers, Ryoboshi, Mamboshi, and obviously Fukaboshi, are actually all there, and they charge, and they're like, Warlord Kuma, we've heard about you. It's so pitiful that you've fallen this far, but we can't stop. We're not going to let you get away with this. And Charlos is just saying, like, who cares if they're royalty? They're just fish. We'll just bury the family with money. It won't matter, who cares? And we see Rebecca is actually present with the Tontotters. They're watching and they're trying to, like, figure out what they can do, saying that Charlos is the worst. There must be something we can do. And even Sai is like, Mjosgard, can I go and hit him? Sai back from Dressrosa. He's turning to Mjosgard, who was the celestial dragon that not only punched Charlos and dealt with him, but he's a Don Quixote's family member. He was the one saved by Otahime. So he has great reverence towards fishermen because he was saved. He looks kindly on them, like other celestial dragons. But I love it. He's like, by all means, I take full responsibility. He's all yours, Sai. And we can see that Mjosgard gets in the way of Fukaboshi and says, look, you need to restrain yourself. You are a prince. You are royal. And Charlos is like over his shoulder, like, you hit me earlier. How could you, kill him, Kuma, deal with him. And Mjosgard and Fukaboshi are having this sort of back and forward tussle, saying, look, like, what's the difference? I can't sit back and let him treat my sister like that. And he says, you don't understand, you don't get it. It's easier for those two to escape because they're pirates. And over his shoulder, we see a small little Tontotta jumping up into the sky. We see a man with a pole jumping up, and Charlotte's head in prime hitting range as Sai and Leo swing down with two attacks. They join like their legs together and just like crack down onto Charlos's head. He looks ruined. Like this man's taking a beating, and I love this gag that Oda's just constantly hitting Charlos. Like he's the only celestial dragon that's like really pushing his luck, like really entitled. But these two guys come down. We get like a net tail hammer, drill, dragon nail, come down. These two are pirates. They don't care. They will deal with this man. And then we see everyone's shocked reaction of, oh, they murdered a celestial dragon. How could they do this? And Kuma goes to wind up again, but Morley intervenes, erupting from the ground and sort of bear hugs. Do you get it? A bear Kuma? Bear hugs Kuma and sort of is like, look, don't listen to anyone's orders now, Kuma. It's all right. Let's go home. And he sort of like pulls him down through like the mud he's creating with him. And everyone is like, "Oh my, what is happening? Is that Morley? Like, did they get the keys? Are they escaping? Like, what's happening?" And at that point, Karasu, his raven or crow, is flying in, saying, "Look, right, we can go. We've got the keys. We got to get out. It's time to go, Morley." And he's like, "Right, I'll head down." And he's pulling Kuma, and we can just see Charles on the floor, ruined, and everyone's shocked reaction. But before chapter ends, footsteps. Eam is climbing the stairs towards the throne. One of the side stairs. You just hear his footsteps. And the five elders turn and they're like, Great Eam, King Cobra is still present. They are shocked. And Cobra's face is just in complete astonishment. And Eam speaks, where it just says Lily. And we see a beautiful shot of the giant empty throne and Eam just casually sitting down. Oh, just no care, no sort of grand move. Simply speaks Lily, sits the throne. There's a break next week. If that, I don't think that's where it's going to end it because we still need Sabo's information. What does Sabo learn about this? I think Sabo's going to find Eam on the throne. He's going to at least see this. That's why they pin Cobra's murder on Sabo. That shot of Eam on the throne is so good. Well, I don't think Eam is Lily. I think Eam is a very well aware of Lily and probably dealt with Lily because Lily was the one to refuse being a celestial dragon. Maybe Eam was around back then. Lily didn't trust Eam. Who knows? But decided to try and go back to her kingdom. And Eam dealt with her. Oda's setting this up so damn well. Because at this point now, we're going to get to a point now where we're just going to jump back to Egghead then and carry on with the arc. But we've got so many events across the world now in motion. We know what Shanks is doing, we know what Buggy's doing with the Cross Guilds. Law's done, Kid's done. We've taken a long break from the Straw Hats. Now Eam's actually in the picture talking. Is Eam going to actually converse with Cobra? And Sabo's going to enter and infiltrate? Or Sabo maybe find that phantom room while Eam's currently in the throne room and then work his way down in through that way? guess we'll find out in 2 weeks' time because there's a break. Well, I hope you have a lovely week. See you later.